It's on. We're recording.
It's on? We're
Yeah.
on. Thank you for that, Denise. Okay, Denise, Betsy, great to see you ladies today. Thank you for joining us on this. Hillary, we miss you. We understand these are not easy days for anyone, but especially for our moms who have little ones at home. Husbands are at home doing work. A lot of moms also have work to do at home, plus trying to homeschool the kids and just keep it all together. Wow. Yeah, our hearts are with you, Hillary.
Absolutely. We love you.
Yeah, yeah. All right, well, Denise and Betsy, we are at the end of this book. Can you believe it?
Sad.
I know. I agree.
I have to share with you guys, Betsy, I get my books, like bound like this and covered so they're like a spiral. I had to tape the cover to the plastic cover, the cover of the book, because I was tearing it off. This has been to so many places and traveled. This book is my messiest book yet, Carmen. See how it's kind of ripping right here? Yeah, so I had to tape it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm studying this time.
I was going to say, I hope that's a good sign, Denise.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I love these two chapters. I think I guess I can relate to Jacob here. Yeah, there's a lot I can relate to Jacob with.
Yep.
So let's dig in. Genesis chapter 32, and I'm on page 241 in our workbooks. And it starts off right away to say, Jacob went on his way and the angels of God met him. Mm-hmm. And so then Jacob sends his messengers to Esau. They come back and say, hey, Esau's coming, and there's 400 men with him. Mm-hmm. So observations from this first day.
I just think it's crazy that the angels of God met him. Like, I feel like that's an easy little, like, it's just like in there, just like a very little thing. Nothing else, just they're there.
Good point.
Oh, here comes a doggy. Aww. So cute.
Yeah, I just thought that was interesting, and it's like, what does that mean, almost, kind of?
Betsy, did you unpack that at all? Did you dig into it? Or, because I love that. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's easy to just skip right over. It's a short first verse, and it's easy to skip right over that.
I didn't unpack it a lot. Like, I didn't like research it any. Mm-hmm. I just sort of like that. I sort of took it as like, that's the place that he's coming from. Like, he's coming to a place, like, day one, it sort of ends with this really cool prayer and Jacob sort of expressing his fears. And I thought it was kind of interesting that he's expressing these fears when he's coming from a place of angels are with him right there, like even in the midst of the angels are right there and he's like seeing them and he like knows that they're there, he's still afraid. So it really kind of speaks a little bit towards how afraid Jacob was, even if like a bunch of angels weren't gonna like keep him calm. Does that make any sense?
It makes great sense to me, and thank you for bringing that out. I think he's got the angels there, and he also remembers God's promise to that comes out in the prayer. Like, he remembers God's promise to him that I'm going to do good to you. So he's got this promise of the Lord. He's got, the Lord has promised him, I will not leave you until I bring you back here. I'm going to be with you. So he has this promise, and then this camp of angels. So, but he still gives way to fear.
I found it's interesting as you're talking about it. I would agree with you. 32 and 33 are some of my favorite chapters in the whole book of Genesis. And, God meets us where we're at. And so to have a camp of angels, then God felt that was what Jacob needed at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean,
Absolutely.
I think they met him.
Yeah. Yeah, like they made the effort. Like
Yeah.
they didn't meet them. The angels met him.
Right.
I think that's
Can you take this back at all? Like when the dream that Jacob had with the ladder going to heaven, and God's at the top saying, I am the Lord, and the angels are going up and down. I mean, they're messengers of God, right? So it kind of took me back to that dream. And here are messengers of God meeting you.
Bingo. I think that's excellent, Denise. Absolutely. And it's almost like Jacob's journey has been bookended by the angels. Like it began, he was leaving the land of his fathers, right? And his future was uncertain at that time. He's running for his life. There was fear then, and he has this dream, and the angels are ascending and descending. And here he is. He's coming back to the land of his fathers, and boom, God blesses him. That these angels meet him as he's coming back into the land. I was very struck by that, and did dig in. I'm trying to look. I don't know, my desk is sort of a mess here right now, but angels, basically, I just defined it this way: spiritual beings who assist God.
Right.
Yeah. So
they would be a representative then of God, because they are taking a message from God to the people, right? Or to whomever. So, yeah.
So love that. I just love that this chapter starts off this way. Anything else from day one that stood out to you?
I thought he was noticeably humble when he prayed to God for this prayer. So he asked God to deliver him from the hand of Esau, and I felt like the way that he prayed, I noticed a difference in him. Yeah, character-wise.
Yeah, it's a very humble and honest prayer. I really liked his prayer. It almost made me feel proud of Jacob. Like he's responding in this way. He's afraid and he's responding in this great prayer.
I agree with you.
It's a cool contrast to see that, Denise.
I agree with you. Yeah.
I love that, Betsy. Yeah, being proud of Jacob. And I think he gives us a model prayer.
Yes.
I learned from his prayer. There's things I can take away, and agree with you. Like the humility that his prayer shows. It's a humble prayer. And also, Betsy, you mentioned that he's just real here too.
Plus, he prays God's words directly from God back to him. And we've been taught, that's a powerful thing to do, to pray God's word, what we read, right? Back to God. So he set a great example too, I felt.
Amen. Okay, so all right, so he's met by these angels of God. He prays this great prayer. That kind of ends day one. What about day two then?
Day two was kind of confusing to me. I really, if I'm being honest, I struggled trying to find an application or a main point. So maybe you guys can help me out there. Because it just seemed, I don't know, because I feel like I flip-flopped a lot with Jacob this week of him being oh, you're doing great. And then are you doing good? Is this a good thing? I can't tell right now. If this
You're right on.
I feel at this point I was is he doing the right thing by doing all this? So I don't know. I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts.
No, I am right there with you, Betsy.
Okay.
I am right with you. No, at first, my first time through, right, I'm wow, Jacob puts together this generous gift. He's so generous. I want to be generous. But then as I went back through it again, then I'm no, wait a second. Is this just for Esau? Or is there a little bit of this that's for Jacob too? Do you know what I'm saying?
And I think that the reason that we would question if there is a little bit of this for Jacob is because he orchestrated how the gift was going to be presented. There is I don't think there is anything wrong with being a gift giver, right? God blesses greatly. And if he blesses somebody and they want to bless, whatever that gift looks like, that can touch somebody's heart, right? But the fact that he orchestrated, okay, and it's 580 animals, and he breaks them up into sections with the servant who is taking one section at a time, how to present them and what to say to Esau, right? And he says, you shall say they belong. Now, every person, so every servant because they break up the animals, right? So Esau doesn't hear this message one time. He hears them multiple times. They belong to your servant Jacob. They are a present sent to my lord Esau. Jacob is not Esau's servant, and Esau is no lord. So I think it's the heart condition what's happening here. And so the flip-flop back and forth, absolutely, because you think, well, if you're going to give a gift, that's a lovely thing to do, right? During this whole pandemic and people being in, people are doing kind things for one another, it really touches your heart. But if it is because you have motives to help you, that's not, no. So it looks good and he's way off. Can I be so bold to say that?
Yeah, no, that I kind of like how you say that, Denise, and agree with you. For me, it jumped out, and I highlighted verse 20, where we have this window into Jacob's thoughts, and it says, "For Jacob thought, I may appease him the present that goes ahead of me, and afterward I shall see his face. Perhaps he will accept me." I mean, to me, who's that about? Is that about Esau or is that about Jacob?
And where's God in the equation? My goodness, he just sent angels to you. I mean, kind of when I read this, I'll tell you, Betsy, you go from like, I'm proud of you. Look what you're doing. How great. And then you come to this and you're like, well, I don't think I'm as proud of you right now. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm. But okay, so girls, let's just get real here then. I think we're all sort of seeing this in a similar way. How many times have you been Jacob?
Oh.
I think the easier question is, how many times have I not been Jacob?
There you go. Yeah. Okay, we can stop the video. We've all learned enough for the day. We can go off of that. Listen, I'm a gift giver. Like, I would say that if we would get into the love languages, I would say that I love to give a gift. I would say 90% of the time my heart is in the right place. I will tell you one time, I'll be very specific. You know how one of the local radio stations raises money for Children's Hospital, and it's a big, big deal in our area? Well, Steve went and gave money, and they announced his name on the radio. And I thought, well, I'm going to give some money too, because I want my name announced on the radio. That was, it was great to give money for Children's Hospital, right? Didn't get my name. They didn't say my name, and they shouldn't have, right? So who was that about?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And I do think we are called, and I think it's true. We see it in the New Testament. And look what God has given us, his one and only son.
Mm-hmm.
Which we are called to give with no strings attached. Remind us your doggy's name, Betsy.
His name's Alfie. He's being really weird right now. Usually he leaves me alone for a bit.
Well, this is all part of what we're doing. You have to leave Alfie with you.
Okay.
Little addition. We love dogs.
We love you, Alfie. Okay. All right. So let's move on, ladies.
Can we talk about a main point and an application, just because Betsy said she was having a hard time coming up with that?
I think that's a great idea. Yes, thank you.
Do you have one?
Oh, no, you go for it.
No, you go for it.
Yeah, you know what? I took away here two things. One is I do want to be a generous gift giver. I think that's worthy to emulate. But then to check my motive. Like is this a pure gift?
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, does it have something to do with me? And my own seeking, like I think we see, here's where I can relate to Jacob, is he's seeking maybe comfort, to take away from his fear, seeking approval, seeking control. And I think those are three things that I often seek in my humanness: control, approval, comfort.
I have to share one. People out in online land, I have tons of stories, and so hopefully, I think this is appropriate. We've been paying attention to neighbors during. Oh, there's Go-Go. Here we go.
Yeah, another dog.
He's climbing. Let's
go get my dog and put him on my lap. Yeah. Anyway, so we've been checking on neighbors during this time, and we live out by a farm, so we don't always see our neighbors. And we have neighbors that have some significant medical conditions going on. And so, I've been trying to take some things. I knew some things about their medical conditions or some experiences they were having. So I thought, oh, this will be good. This might help his stomach feel better, yada, yada, whatever, right? And then the one day I just went to the store and picked up a really good jar of spaghetti sauce, a box of pasta, and some bread. And I knocked on the door. And I actually, my heart was totally to help them, but we don't really know them. They live right next door, but they stay inside. And yeah. So when and he's asked about us before to another neighbor that we know pretty well. And so I knocked on the door and I backed up, and he answered the door, and I said, I just brought you dinner so you could make it. And he said, I really don't want you doing this. And then kind of said some things. And I've never felt bad. And now I kind of feel like, okay, Lord, when you want us to do something again, let me know. Maybe I'll handle it differently. Like maybe I'll call them or whatever, but I don't ever, you don't ever want somebody else to feel bad. And so my application was be humble, consider a gift, asking God for direction, right? Gifts are fabulous. They're fun to receive. They're amazing to give, right? But you also have to consider the recipient, and yeah, so.
Yeah, I know this is kind of jumping ahead, but do you think that, looking back, when we know the ending, do you think Jacob needed to prepare this gift?
No.
Yeah. To me, it just seems like he's spinning, he's spun his wheels here. And
well, he humbly asked God for help, and then he takes the situation into his own hands. And lo and behold, who would know? Esau was rich.
Yeah.
If he was poor and all this kept coming, you'd be like, well, I was going to kill you. Now I love you. You know what I'm saying? It's not, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But God had gone ahead of Jacob as he had promised to do, and had prepared Esau's heart. So yeah, I know that kind of jumped ahead. Spoiler alert.
There couldn't be a spoiler alert in the chapter, right? Right. It's all in the same chapter, okay? If you would have went, like if we had more chapters and you would have went ahead, that was different.
Okay, yeah.
By the way, when we studied John, I know this is just a little insert, I had a baby Christian in my group, and she was new to Bible study, new to the Bible, and somebody said something about John the Baptist, what his demise was, and she was like, I had no idea. Total spoiler alert. I know, it was the sweetest thing ever. Yeah, you didn't do that.
Okay. Thanks, Denise.
Sure.
All right, so let's pop over to day 3. We have Jacob, who is left alone. He's everyone else has crossed the river. Here he is alone. and we have the wrestling match. So I'm interested in your thoughts on this day, ladies.
I think this day was my favorite. I liked
agree.
this day a lot. While I was doing it, have you guys ever heard of Chris Renzema has a song called Jacob?
Oh,
I think it's like really, and like I was listening to it today, and it's like really cool, and it sort of goes through like Jacob's story, and it talks a little bit about that. So like it's just like a cool, like, I don't know, if you want to hear like a worshipy song about it. I think it was really cool. So I really liked it. So like it sort of gave me like a good mindset of like where Jacob could have been, especially with like him changing his name from Jacob to Israel. I think that was like a big part of the song. But anyway, that was just like, I'm just throwing that out there. One of the big things that I saw was just how powerful this man is, whether it's God, Jesus, or an angel. There's like I feel like there's like lots of different interpretations of exactly who this person Jacob is wrestling, but regardless, this person is from God. So whether it's all these different hypotheses, all these different things, it doesn't matter. It's from God. So we can see that and just see how powerful this person is just because he touched his hip. But like the thing that really stuck out to me from that is that God allows for Jacob to wrestle with him. Even though he's so powerful, he could easily overcome him. He allows for this to like progress all night. And like he allows to like just do this with him. And that encouraged me a lot because it sort of like gives us ownership and like a little bit of freedom to wrestle with God. Like God allows us to wrestle with him. He's not going to like stop it. He's not going to be like, you can't fight things out with me. He allows it to happen. So I think that really encouraged me, and I really like that from this day. So
I love that
I
thought.
really like that. Thank you,
Yeah,
Betsy.
it comes down to choice. No matter what situation you're in, God does not take away your choice, right?
Yeah, that's true. Thank you for that. Great thoughts, ladies.
Carmen, I think I cut you off. I couldn't really hear you, so I apologize.
Oh, no, I was just saying great thoughts. Yeah, love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. What else? What else did you observe here?
I pictured, when you guys see the old Westerns and it's two gritty guys that are like in the dirt and they're fighting, and I mean, they're like going at it. And I mean, all night, I'd have been in that fight for 2 and I'd have been gone, I'd been like, okay, done. Yeah, that's all I got. But this was a lot for Jacob to surrender. And so that fight lasted all night long. And God was there with him through the whole struggle.
Yeah, I like how you say that God was with him through the whole struggle. Yeah. And Betsy, to your point, that God allows Jacob to struggle with him.
He's not a dictator, is he?
No.
He's a heavenly Father who loves.
Yeah. Just thinking about it, I just wonder like how he views that, you know what I mean? Like here the word says that he touches Jacob's hip. Well, for God, that's a touch maybe, but for Jacob, this is a blow. I mean, to have your hip put out of socket, this is a blow. So I don't know. I like it this morning, and I didn't really do a great job of explaining this and teaching, but I just remember when my kids were little, and like I'm like, okay, I've got this big sweater on, so you can't see my dinky arms, but I've never been strong at arm wrestling. But when the kids were little, I could just boom, and so it's almost like I see God. I mean, that's God, right? I mean, who do we think we are to wrestle with him? But I don't know. I guess I just view love and grace in here. It's like mixed up into the equation somehow, that he puts up with this. And I don't know. I kind of see it as a loving thing too.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like this wrestling, like, I don't feel like there were punches and blood. I feel like it was, wrestling like a sport, how they wrestle each other and try to pin each other down on the ground, if you will. I feel like it was more that all night long, right? And it took all night because that's how much Jacob, I feel, had to surrender.
Mm.
And how beautiful that God would walk with him or wrestle with him, because that's what he needed. He met him where he was at by giving him the angels, and now he's meeting him where he's at to wrestle with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even as you say wrestling, I think that's like a very close, intimate, like almost thing. Like it's not like far away, like we're gonna like do like bow and arrow shooting or anything like that, or we're gonna talk from a distance. Like to use the word wrestle, I feel like is very like close in proximity.
It is close in proximity.
It's such a good point.
It's a great point. And my husband was a wrestler in high school, right? I mean, the outfits that they wore got stuck on something that they wore, either a knee pad or something, got stuck in his braces. And they got the two wrestlers got like stuck together. So they had to, in the middle of the match, they had to do it. But yeah, they don't ever stop touching each other. They may do a dance for a minute and then they're in at it. So that's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a question though. When I was reading through this, I was like, who started the wrestling? Like, who was it? Jacob? Was it God, the angel, Jesus, whoever? Like, who? I don't know. Because I don't think, does it say who starts it?
It says, and a man wrestled with him. Jacob was left alone in verse 24, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day.
Yeah, so it doesn't really say. I love the question, Betsy. It doesn't really say who started it. I mean, obviously this shows up. I mean, one of the things that I taught on this morning is that, okay, it's nighttime, right? And we have to, one of the rules we've learned for studying Old Testament narrative is that we read this literally. So this is a real fight. It's physical, as you ladies have just described, but then we also take away the spiritual implications. And so spiritually, I think Jacob's in the dark here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A little bit in the dark. So was it that this man shows up and Jacob, immediately begins to wrestle? Or yeah.
Well, and then verse 30, it says, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
I think that's an interpretation right there. That, this man, I think up at the top, this man, it's almost like the author is putting us in the moment with Jacob. Like he's in the dark spiritually, so he doesn't really realize this is God at first, but then the wrestling continues. And yeah, I think Jacob interprets this for us, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered. How amazing is that?
Well, and you think like, okay, when you think about Moses, the burning bush, right? Getting the 10, I almost called them the 12 commandments, lost my head there. The 10 commandments, had to take, thank you for laughing. He had to take his shoes off. And I know you're not supposed to use the movies, but when Charlton Heston comes down the hill, his hair is white. But you know what I'm saying? He, like you said, Betsy, he was he touched him the whole time. And he walked away with a funky hip. That's the glory of God. That's...
What's the main point? I think here we need to solidify, okay, what's the main point? We've talked through this wrestling match, but why? What's the main point here?
I think it's just Jacob receives the blessing after wrestling with God. Is that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely, Betsy. Absolutely. And, you know, I kind of see this as a struggle to um, to lay down Jacob too, to put off the old self. Like I see this as Jacob, you know, when God asks him, what is your name?
I'm so
Like,
glad you brought that up. I was hoping you would.
I mean, why would God ask him his name? Of course God knows his name. This is for Jacob, right? To be
He's a
able to see
deceiver.
who he really is and
Mhm.
come face to face with,
Mhm.
I'm a deceiver.
Yeah. By the way, while we're talking about this, one thing that hits me is, you know, we have relationships with different people. Who would you get into the ring with? Who do you have that important of a relationship with? You know, because some people might just walk away and say, you know, I have faith in God. I'm good. I'm I'm good. And yet this is what God wants. He wants to have all of us. I see so many parallels to us now and how we apply it. So, yeah.
I love that. That's a great application, Denise. Yeah. Any other applications here?
Well, I think I shared this with you before. I use desiringgod.org, which is John Piper's site, and he had a really good point that I'd like to share. And I'm going to look down for 1 minute, ladies. It says that wrestling with God changed Jacob's identity. He was no longer to be known as the one who received the blessing by deception. This time he received God's blessing by prevailing with God by faith. And so,
I like that.
yeah.
Yeah. I like that. And I don't you think that there's a piece here that God is not going to allow Jacob to go into the land of his fathers, to go into this promised land as the old Jacob, and this is going to be God's blessing. I feel like I didn't say that very well. Do you know what I mean?
Very well.
Okay.
And also, look how many times he's bunged up, right? Because you think about yourself personally, and yet God still does this, and he can go back to his father's land as a new self, a new, new in the Lord, right?
Mm-hmm.
We become new in Christ. They didn't have.
Yeah. Betsy, anything else you take away from Jacob?
I think well, one of like my biggest takeaways had to do with just trusting and sort of just like praising God for allowing me to wrestle with him as I like go through stuff myself. But on my application, I was sort of thinking through like, okay, so I feel like I am wrestling with God. And when Jacob was wrestling with him, he had a motive, like he wanted something from God. And I'm like, sort of questioning, like, what do I want? Like, what am I fighting for with God? So I think trying to think through that and like, I don't know, I feel like that's a big question. So trying to like meditate and like pray through that, I think is like my big application for probably today and probably this season, honestly. So.
Love that. Love that. Well, ladies, we have been discussing for a while. We still have, we have day 4, and I don't think we need to spend much time on it, but yeah, any surprises here for you?
I mean, I don't know. I start like you read day 4 and I was like, yay, this is so sweet. Like, this is so cute. Like, I saw like Esau running and I was like, this is like the prodigal son almost. And then like it turns in the end and I'm like, Jacob goes away. Like he doesn't like follow. Like, I don't know. I sort of also was like in one of those moments where I was like, is this the right thing for Jacob to do? Is this not? Because I feel like we had a great Jacob moment in day 3 and I'm like, is Jacob doing the right thing in day 4? Are we ending on a sour note? So I don't know. It's another one of those. I was like, I don't know.
Interesting, Betsy. I didn't get that at all. But I totally see where you're coming from on it. I don't know. I guess, but I can very quickly give people the benefit of the doubt too, you know. And I felt like when here was my first instinct, my gut reaction when I went through it is that, okay, Jacob also has been tricked a few times. Like he's learned the ways of the world, and he knows it probably is, it's not going to be great for him and Laban, or Laban, him and Esau to be living in the same place, okay. Right? Yeah. So I saw it as being, I don't know, that he had grown up, that he had matured in some way, and he's taking a good way out. Plus, he's going into the land of his fathers.
Yeah, but you know what? His crew was kind of weak, right? I mean, they'd been traveling for a long time, and that's why he didn't want to stay up with Esau. But when he built a house and booths for his livestock, and he wasn't to the place where God wanted him to go, that's a little bit more than a rest. You know, I was thinking if you needed to stop and camp for just a little bit, but he kind of gave himself a little bit more permanency, and then he came safely to the city of Shechem, right? And so that whole thing, I kind of have different feelings about that. I'm not sure whether I like it or I don't. If it would have just said he would have set up camp so that everybody, you know, the kids were really tired, everything, I get that. But the house, I don't know.
Okay. All right, ladies. I appreciate that. I will do some more pondering on that. We can end it on a high note, though, with Jacob purchasing this land, right? Mm-hmm. And building an altar to the Lord.
Mm-hmm. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved the kind of the English translation for this: a strong God, a mighty one, a God who keeps his promise or promises. A strong God, a mighty one, a God who keeps his promises. And so for me, that was ending on a high note with Jacob.
Is that what that Elohim Israel means?
Yes, yes. And some shorten it just to say, you know, the God of Israel, but that's the meaning of the name. A strong God, a mighty one, a God who keeps his promises. So
thank you.
Go Jacob.
Go Jacob.
I relate to Jacob. I see, you know, I see some of the same tendencies in myself. Like, I want to be fully dependent on the Lord. I want to persevere for the blessing, as Jacob perseveres for the blessing, and just, yeah, constantly depend on him. But I think we see Jacob fall back from time to time into his humanness of doing things in Jacob power, despite being met by the angels of the Lord and this wonderful prayer time. We see him kind of fall back into his own humanness. So I can relate to that.
Jacob is very relatable. So I think it's encouraging that he's so relatable. And I appreciate that he's so relatable because, you know, God changes his name to Israel. And that's like a huge thing throughout the rest of the Bible is Israel. And, you know, God's giving him the blessing despite everything he's done. And I think that's just, I don't know, that encourages me.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. You know, I met with some of our small group leaders at lunchtime today, and one was talking about just how relatable the patriarchs are, Abraham, mm-hmm. Isaac, and Jacob, and maybe we can unpack that a little bit more next week. But yeah, ladies, thank you for joining me today. This has been fun.
Thanks.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And stop.